Welcome to our deep dive today.
Mm,
I know you're on this journey, towards healing and reunification with your child,
yeah,
and you've given me a lot of really powerful material to dig into with our expert here.
absolutely.
It's clear that you understand this. This isn't just about like legal steps,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, it's about deep personal work,
Yeah.
and that's where we're going to focus today.
Yeah. It's encouraging to see this level of commitment because you're absolutely right. This is
Mhm.
complex.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that stands out immediately from these sources is the need for a balanced approach. We're talking about combining professional expertise with the raw honesty of lived experience.
Yes. I was particularly drawn to critical overlooked elements in parental healing and reunification.
Mm.
It really dives into the parent's personal healing journey
Yeah.
before even getting into strategies for reconnecting with the child.
Yeah.
Why is that so crucial?
Because you can't pour from an empty cup, right? The California Evidence-Based Clearinghouse and Child Welfare Information Gateway, they both have research highlighting this.
Okay.
If you haven't addressed your own unprocessed trauma, it can actually sabotage your progress
Yeah.
in rebuilding trust with your child. It's like
Yeah.
trying to build a house on a foundation that's constantly shifting.
Okay. That makes sense.
Oh.
But where do you even begin with something like that?
It starts with recognizing that you deserve healing, too.
Okay.
There's this quote from Path to Healing that says, "Your child didn't choose the timing of their trauma. They shouldn't have to choose the timing of their healing."
Hmm.
It's a powerful reminder that this isn't selfish, it's essential.
I love that. And I think for a lot of parents in this situation, guilt and shame can be really overwhelming.
Absolutely. And those emotions need to be acknowledged, not buried.
Right.
What's fascinating is that the Journey Home podcast, in an interview with Michael Roberts, had a whole episode on a daily wellness plan.
Yeah.
Practical. Mindfulness, exercise, good nutrition, sleep. These things aren't just trendy self-care tips, they're the building blocks for emotional stability.
And that stability is what allows you to show up for your child in a consistent way.
Exactly. Think about it this way. If you're constantly reacting from a place of overwhelm or emotional dysregulation,
Yeah.
how can you possibly create a sense of safety and security for your child?
Right. It's almost like you're asking them to heal in an environment that still feels chaotic.
And that's where a method like trust-based relational intervention, or TBRI, can be so helpful.
Okay.
It's not just about managing behaviors, it's about understanding the impact of trauma on a child's brain development and responding in a way that fosters connection and trust.
Okay, I've heard of TBRI, but to be honest, I don't fully understand it.
It's a pretty in-depth approach, but one of the core principles is creating predictable routines.
Okay.
This helps kids who've experienced trauma feel a sense of safety and control because they know what to expect.
So it's about creating that sense of stability externally in the environment to mirror the inner stability you're working on.
Exactly. And research shows that when parents use this approach, you see incredible improvement in attachment behaviors.
Hmm.
Things like eye contact, seeking comfort when distressed, being able to regulate their emotions more effectively.
Hmm.
These are all signs of a secure attachment.
That makes a lot of sense, but it also sounds like a huge undertaking.
It is. And that's why self-compassion is so important throughout this process.
Yeah.
There will be days when you feel like you're failing, when the guilt and shame are overwhelming.
Right.
It's okay to feel those things.
Okay.
In fact, critical overlooked elements really emphasizes allowing those emotions to surface so you can work through them effectively.
So you're saying that acknowledging those difficult emotions is actually a step towards healing, not something to be ashamed of.
Absolutely. It's about giving yourself permission to be human, to make mistakes, and to learn from them.
Yeah.
Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint,
Right.
and you don't have to run it alone.
That brings us to the support system, right? Because you've mentioned a few times now that this isn't a solo mission.
Right, which is where we're going to go next, building that support network. Because even with all the best intentions and strategies, you're going to need people in your corner.
Absolutely.
Yeah, building a support system is like creating the safety net,
Yeah.
because even with the best intentions and strategies, you're going to have moments where you feel like you're falling.
It's true. And I imagine for a lot of parents in this situation, they might have lost some of those support systems, due to the circumstances that led to reunification being necessary in the first place.
That's a really important point, and that's why it's so crucial to be proactive about building new connections or strengthening existing ones.
So where do you even begin with that?
Well, Michael Roberts, in that Journey Home interview, he talks about having different people for different types of support.
Yeah.
You might have a trauma therapist who's helping you process your own past, a family reunification therapist who specializes in rebuilding those parent-child relationships, and even a support group where you can connect with other parents going through similar challenges.
It sounds like it's about assembling a team, each person with their own area of expertise.
Exactly. And then there's your personal network, friends, family members, mentors, maybe even a spiritual advisor, if that's part of your life. These are people who can offer emotional support, practical help, a listening ear, someone to celebrate the victories with, and someone to hold your hand through the setbacks.
Because there will be setbacks,
Yeah.
right? This isn't a straight line to happily ever after.
Of course not. Healing is messy, it's unpredictable. There will be days when you feel like you're taking 2 steps back for every 1 step forward.
Right.
And that's why having those people you can call on, even in the middle of the night if you need to, is so essential.
And I'm also thinking about triggers.
Yeah.
Because this is such emotionally charged territory, it seems inevitable that there will be moments that bring up difficult feelings, maybe even anger or resentment.
Absolutely. Triggers are a part of the process, but the key is to have a plan for how you're going to handle them.
Okay, so what does that plan look like?
It starts with awareness. What are your specific triggers? Maybe it's a certain tone of voice, a specific phrase, or even a particular time of day when you're feeling more vulnerable. The more you understand your triggers, the better equipped you'll be to navigate them.
What about in the moment when that trigger hits?
One of the most helpful techniques I've come across, and it's mentioned in several of these sources, is the PAUSE method.
Okay, break that down for me.
So P stands for pull back physically. If you can create some space between yourself and the situation, this could mean stepping out of the room for a few minutes or even just turning away and taking a few deep breaths.
It's about getting some breathing room, literally.
Okay, what's A?
A is acknowledge the trigger.
Name it.
What specifically is causing this reaction? Is it something your child said, a memory that got stirred up, or maybe even just feeling overwhelmed in general? Bringing awareness to the trigger helps you take back control. So it's about understanding the why behind the reaction. Okay, UD.
U is for utilize breathing techniques. Deep, slow breaths can be incredibly grounding in moments of stress. There are tons of different techniques out there, like box breathing, the 4-7-8 method, or even just focusing on the rise and fall of your chest. Find what works for you and practice it regularly so it becomes second nature when you need it.
Because when you're in that heightened emotional state, it's hard to think clearly, right?
Exactly. That's why having these tools in your back pocket is so important. So S is for state your commitment to staying calm. This could be an internal affirmation like, I can handle this, or even speaking it out loud if appropriate. The act of verbalizing your intention can be really powerful.
Like a mini pep talk for yourself. Okay, what's E?
E is for engage when regulated. Once you've taken those steps to calm your nervous system, you can re-engage with the situation in a more thoughtful, constructive way.
So it's not about suppressing the emotions, it's about managing them so you can respond effectively, not just react impulsively.
Exactly. And, one thing that really stuck with me from the Holistic Daily Wellness Plan was the idea of documenting triggers and responses.
Why is that so helpful?
Because it allows you to start noticing patterns. Maybe you realize that you're most triggered when you're tired or when a certain topic comes up in conversation. This awareness is gold because it allows you to be proactive.
You can start to anticipate those triggers and maybe even avoid some of them altogether.
Or at least be better prepared to handle them when they do arise. It's about taking control of your emotional landscape rather than being controlled by it.
And that feels crucial in a process as emotionally charged as this one. So we've got our support system, we've got our strategies for managing triggers. What else do we need in our toolkit? It feels like we've covered so much, but I know there's still a piece missing. We've talked about your own healing, building a support network, handling those inevitable triggers.
Right.
But how do you actually start bridging that gap with your child?
It all comes down to consistent action.
Yeah.
It's not enough to just talk about change. You have to embody it.
Right.
And that's where those practical strategies come in.
Okay.
Remember that phrase we talked about earlier? I did harmful things and I'm committed to being different now.
Yeah.
That's the foundation.
Because it acknowledges the hurt without getting defensive.
Exactly. And then it's about backing those words up with actions. Michael Roberts talks a lot about this in Path to Healing, about the importance of validating your child's anger
Okay.
without trying to justify or minimize your past actions.
So it's about taking ownership and demonstrating a genuine desire to change.
Right. And those demonstrations, those consistent actions, are what start to rebuild trust. Think of it like building blocks. Each time you show up emotionally regulated, follow through on a commitment, or respond to your child's needs with empathy,
Yeah.
You're adding another block to that foundation.
I love that analogy. So what are some specific actions that demonstrate this change? I know our sources have some great examples.
Creating predictable routines is huge, especially for kids who've experienced trauma. Knowing what to expect helps them feel safe and in control. Respecting their boundaries, even when it's inconvenient for you, shows that you value their autonomy.
Hmm.
Acknowledging special dates like birthdays or anniversaries, even if they're difficult, demonstrates that you're making an effort to connect with their world.
And maybe most importantly, showing up consistently, even when it feels hopeless.
That's the hardest part, but it's also the most powerful. Because it's in those moments when you're tired, frustrated, and ready to give up that your commitment to change is truly tested.
And I imagine those are also the moments when your child needs you the most.
Absolutely. It's easy to be the fun parent when things are going well. But it's the parent who shows up consistently through the ups and downs who earns that deep, lasting trust.
All of this is really resonating. But I have to be honest, there's a part of me that's still wondering, what if it's not enough? What if I've done too much damage?
It's normal to have those doubts.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are no guarantees in this process. But here's what I can tell you.
Okay.
Focusing on what you can control, your own healing, your actions, your commitment to being different, that's the most powerful thing you can do.
And how do you measure progress? Because healing isn't linear.
Exactly. There will be setbacks. There will be days when it feels like you're moving backwards.
Right.
But if you look closely, you'll start to see those signs of hope. Improvements in your own emotional regulation, for one. Are you handling triggers more effectively?
Hmm.
Are you able to stay calm and present even when things are challenging?
That's a good point. If you're doing the internal work, it's going to show up in your interactions with your child.
Right. And then there's their behavior.
Mm.
Are they becoming more comfortable in your presence? Are they initiating interactions more often? Are they able to regulate their own emotions more effectively? These are all positive indicators.
It's about noticing those subtle shifts that reveal a growing sense of trust and connection.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of documentation. Keep a journal, even if it's just a few notes each day, tracking those positive changes no matter how small. It's a tangible reminder of how far you've come, and it can be incredibly motivating on those days when you're feeling discouraged.
It's like creating a highlight reel of your progress,
Mhm.
showcasing those moments of growth and connection.
Exactly. And remember, every step forward matters. Even if it's just one small positive interaction, one moment of connection, that's a victory worth celebrating.
This has been such an insightful conversation. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
It's been my pleasure. And to our listener, I just want to reiterate, change is possible. It takes courage, commitment, and a whole lot of support, but it's absolutely possible.
And before we go, I want to leave you with this thought. What's one small, concrete action you can take today to demonstrate this change to your child? It could be sending a good morning text, sticking to a promised phone call time, or just acknowledging their feelings without judgment.
Remember, every step you take towards healing, no matter how small, creates a ripple effect that impacts not only your life, but the life of your child as well. Keep moving, keep learning, and keep believing in the power of healing.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back next week with another journey into the heart of a topic that matters. Until then, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep the conversation going.